I have several goals in mind in this teaching of the words of my perfect teacher. First, to help Dharma students lay a solid foundation in Buddhism. Second, to motivate those who took refuge years ago to complete the preliminaries, ngondro, within 1 or 2 years. Third, to dispel some people's wrong views toward Vajrayana and help them establish untainted faith in tantric teachings. During our last class, we discussed bodhicitta in the Sutrayana teachings. We learned that our motivation for listening to the Dharma should be positive, not negative or neutral. In terms of positive motivation, we should avoid having a renunciation mind that seeks only personal liberation, and instead cultivate the bodhicitta mind that aims for the enlightenment of all beings. Of course, the renunciation mind is essential when studying the Dharma. It's not the liberation part that we should avoid, but rather the self part, listening to teachings solely for our own liberation. Before listening to the Dharma, take a moment to examine your motivation. Am I doing this for myself, for all beings, or for no particular reason at all? Genuine bodhicitta arises when your motivation is to benefit all beings. This is the right attitude to cultivate when listening to the Dharma. In addition to listening to and practicing the Dharma with bodhicitta, you should also use your capacity, intelligence, wisdom, or wealth to help others as much as possible in your daily life. This is a requirement for Mahayanists, especially in many parts of the world where people suffer both physically and mentally due to strong mental afflictions and complex cultures. The nectar and elixir of the Dharma is crucial for them to navigate this life and to eventually attain liberation in future lives. Each of you should let your light shine brightly to illuminate the path for others. Even if you can only persuade one person to take refuge in Buddhism, generate bodhicitta, engage in virtuous actions, or refrain from harmful deeds, this is already a significant contribution. Currently, the propagation of the Dharma requires great efforts in producing audio or video files, transcribing teachings, and giving live teachings. Nevertheless, all of these endeavors are worthwhile, even if they benefit only one person who is nourished by the Dharma. Some Dharma friends around me have been working very hard from morning until evening. I understand why they do what they do. They work tirelessly because they aspire to bring the wisdom nectar of the Dharma to people living outside Lilungar, so those people will attain peace and happiness, develop a virtuous affinity with the 3 jewels in this life and in future lives, and embark on the path to enlightenment. Therefore, no matter how hard those Dharma friends have to work, they make not a single complaint. In fact, we are all surrounded by wretched persons, strongly attached to life, relationship, and everything. In order to reach their goals, they are running after the latest trends of everyday life. Yesterday, one of my relatives told me that a herdsman earned the equivalent of 8.5 Chinese yuan from 2 or 3 days of labor, and that this person spent all his earnings on the prepaid service for his mobile phone, which he had bought with a loan. This herdsman's behavior is really disturbing to me. Like many others, he is trying so hard to improve his quality of life. He wants to follow the social trends and own a mobile phone like his peers, but he has no stable resource for income. Therefore, he chose to take labor jobs. These jobs in the Tibetan regions are quite arduous, especially when approaching winter. However, the money he earned through hard work was spent on the prepaid service, and after making a few calls in a few days, the prepaid phone minutes were used up. It is not worthy for him to do so. In the current society, there are many similarly deluded people who are not aware of their own delusion. They rush forward in their own manner, chasing their perceived ideal life like ants in a race. They don't even know anything about Dharma fundamentals, such as rebirth and karma, let alone the doctrine of emptiness in Mahayana Buddhism and pure perception in Vajrayana Buddhism. When this mirage-like life is waving to them, such people just dash forward unceasingly, like children chasing rainbows, until they use up their lives. They've rarely done anything valuable and meaningful in their lives, and they've accumulated unwholesome deeds as high as a mountain. Dharma can save these people and bring them genuine happiness, so we Buddhists are willing to devote ourselves to them unconditionally. Even if our Dharma activities exhaust us at the cost of our health or even life, we won't regret it at all. Of course, it is impossible, even for the Buddha, to make all people believe in Buddhism. Anyway, we never aim for everyone to do Buddhist practice. Meanwhile, please never underestimate the influence you may have on others. Each of you should aspire to bring the Dharmic bliss to some people, such as your friends, family, colleagues, and acquaintances. It's like when we take a new pill and get cured. We want to recommend the pill to other patients like ourselves. In the same manner, after studying and practicing Dharma for years, many of you have truly established the conviction that Dharma can bring immeasurable benefits to all sentient beings in this life and many lives yet to come. It is such a great pity to see thousands of others pass by the Dharma and still suffer, which is like dying of thirst near water. Therefore, you should strive to wake people up from their delusion, and this in itself is the practice of bodhicitta. Bodhicitta is particularly important for practitioners. When listening to the Dharma, make sure you aspire to benefit all sentient beings. The power of such an aspiration is inconceivable, through which you will definitely bring benefit to beings when causes and conditions align. Some disciples of Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche were quite renowned, but due to various conditions in their lives, they passed away before launching their own Dharma activities of benefiting beings. Some other disciples were relatively unknown at the time, but they aroused intense bodhicitta, so later they were able to guide numerous beings onto the path of liberation. To benefit sentient beings, you don't have to excel in intelligence, skill, or wealth. As long as you firmly embrace the aspiration of helping others in your mind, you will in time develop the capacity to benefit all beings. Of course, arousing bodhicitta is not as easy as making an announcement about it, which only requires talk. You must actively practice bodhicitta. As for us senior practitioners at Larungar, after decades of bodhicitta practice, we may not claim to have attained the fruition of an enlightened noble being, but we should have received the blessings well-deserved for an ordinary being. In particular, we've deeply inscribed in our minds an irreversible faith in Buddha Shakyamuni and gratitude toward our gurus. We like to share both with others. If you continue practicing diligently, step by step, the possibility of attaining enlightenment is promising. At that point, your defilements and obscurations will be uprooted, and your attained spiritual state will be indescribable. Therefore, you should sustain the practice of bodhicitta. For instance, if you notice roadkill, you should recite the Avalokiteshvara mantra several times and dedicate the merit to the poor animal. Little by little, your mind will be transformed, and you will be able to totally integrate views with your practice. The above is about the importance of arousing bodhicitta. The following is about the proper attitude of Vajrayana, or the secret mantrayana. To those who know the fundamentals of Buddhism and the Vajrayana views, this attitude is very extraordinary, whereas to those who have never come across Vajrayana and know nothing about the doctrine of emptiness in Mahayana, it may be hard to attune to it. Nonetheless, the pure perception of Vajrayana is foremost. The Torch of the Three Methods says of Vajrayana, it has the same goal but is free from all confusion. It is rich in methods and without difficulties. It is for those with sharp faculties. The mantra vehicle is sublime. The same goal in the verse refers to the fact that Sutrayana and Vajrayana have the same ultimate goal of attaining full enlightenment. Both vehicles agree on attaining the ultimate fruition of Buddhahood through arousing bodhicitta at the beginning, accumulating merit and wisdom in the middle, and attaining the union of Rupakaya and Dharmakaya in the end. However, Vajrayana surpasses Sutrayana in terms of views, meditation, action, and practitioners' faculties. It may be hard for some of you to immediately accept the superiority of Vajrayana, but if you seriously study Sutrayana and Tantrayana and compare both together, you will understand why Vajrayana is so extraordinary. The Vajrayana views that some people from Chinese Buddhism find most hard to understand include attaining Buddhahood in a single lifetime, and that afflictions are bodhi, or enlightenment. In fact, in these points, there are similarities between Vajrayana and Chan Buddhism. If you reject Vajrayana, you might also be skeptical about the tradition of sudden enlightenment in Chan Buddhism, which also embraces the means of master's instructions, the blessings of Buddhist scriptures, or the Huatou method. Through these methods, Chan practitioners with sharp faculties, like their counterparts in Vajrayana Buddhism, may at once recognize the nature of the mind and attain the fruition of an enlightened noble one. Of course, it is very hard for an ordinary, conceptually minded person to clearly discern the difference between Sutrayana and Vajrayana. Thus, you must first listen to the Dharma and contemplate the teachings, so you will discern which approach is superior to the other. The verse of the Torch of the Three Methods summarizes Vajrayana's 4 distinguishing features, which make it superior to Sutrayana. First, Vajrayana's view is free from all confusion. Buddhist views consist of the ultimate truth and the relative truth. Sutrayana, via the doctrine of the middle way, establishes that the ultimate nature of phenomena is the great emptiness, devoid of any conceptual proliferation. However, unlike Vajrayana, Sutrayana doesn't explicitly elaborate on the luminous nature of Buddha nature. As for relative truth, Sutrayana perceives all phenomena as illusions and dreams, which appear yet lack inherent existence. But unlike Vajrayana, Sutrayana doesn't recognize the appearance of everything as the essence of the 5 Buddha families and the 5 wisdoms. Therefore, Vajrayana is superior to Sutrayana in terms of the views. Second, Vajrayana's action is without difficulties. After receiving supreme pointing out instructions, Vajrayana practitioners directly transform the sensual pleasures of the 5 senses, seeing, smelling, touch, hearing, and taste, into the path to enlightenment. Such practitioners can swiftly perfect the paths and stages and attain enlightenment without giving up or rejecting anything, including negative emotions. The Vajrayana vehicle requires less extremely ascetic practice to reach enlightenment. For example, King Indrabhuti recognized the nature of the mind while retaining hedonistic pleasures. In terms of actions, Vajrayana is very similar to Chan Buddhism. Third, Vajrayana is rich in methods. It consists of many uncommon methods, including the generation stage, the completion stage, and the great perfection of the Nyingma tradition. The Vajrayana path also includes abundant pith instructions from the gurus. These methods are only brought up indirectly and covertly in Sutrayana. Fourth, Vajrayana is for those with sharp faculties. Practitioners develop 5 spiritual faculties: faith, diligence, mindfulness, concentration, and wisdom. For Vajrayana practitioners, the most essential one is faith. With fervent faith in the Guru and Vajrayana, such practitioners can rapidly realize the nature of mind, as repeatedly shown over the history of Vajrayana Buddhism. Thus, according to the aforementioned 4 features, Sutrayana is inferior to Vajrayana. Many people who have long studied Sutrayana, yet know little about Vajrayana, might find it hard to accept this statement on first hearing. I have even encountered some Dharma masters who are unwilling to accept the supremacy of Vajrayana, despite a lack of legitimate reasons for their positions. But their reluctance is understandable, as acceptance requires a process. In fact, Vajrayana explicates the hidden teachings in Sutrayana. Without the help of pith instructions in Vajrayana, it would be very hard to reveal the profound hidden meaning in sutras, such as the Flower Garland Sutra, the Lotus Sutra, and more. A person only learned in Sutrayana won't be able to well interpret teachings in Vajrayana, whereas a person learned in Vajrayana surely can expound the teachings in Sutrayana. If you know little about Vajrayana, you may ask about it from a Dharma master who is learned in Vajrayana. Please don't carelessly slander, publicly condemn, or even easily abandon Vajrayana. These actions will cause terrible negative karmic effects. It is not because I myself am a tantric practitioner that I am trying my best to promote Vajrayana and solicit your agreement. My words are from an unbiased standpoint and based on objective assessment. I always try to be objective and impartial when I deal with people or things. Although someone may disagree and consider me non-objective and partial, I dare to honestly say I have a clean conscience. My conviction about Vajrayana is not a blind faith. After all, I have been studying Vajrayana for many years, so I am learned about the teachings. One day I joked with a Dharma friend, saying, although I don't have a doctoral degree, I do have doctoral knowledge. My Dharma studies are equivalent in content and level to a doctoral degree. The friend asked me why, and I answered, the secular knowledge I had pursued is relatively easy. Although I didn't eventually end up in a university, the school subjects I attended were very easy. So if I had chosen to continue my secular education, I don't think it would have been hard for me to get a doctoral degree. I know some people who are less smart than I am, but who already have 1 or 2 doctoral degrees. In relation to studying secular knowledge at schools, I only knew what diligence really is after becoming a monk. One teacher from the normal school I attended said to me, "You were a hard-working student at school. How have you been after being a monk?" I answered, "I actually didn't study hard. I was the mischievous kid at school, about which I feel embarrassed. It was not until I became a monk that I knew how to study hard and to devote all my time to studying the Dharma. I've spent more than 20 years hearing, contemplating, and meditating on the Dharma, and half of my devotion is on Vajrayana. The more I study Vajrayana, the more faithful I become." Some outsiders criticize Vajrayana for this or that reason. These people are not necessarily learned. Even if they are, they haven't studied as long as we have. After delving into the Dharma for years, I am entirely convinced that if we want to become proficient in Buddhism, we should first have a general understanding of Vajrayana teachings. Of course, it will be very challenging for an ordinary person to completely grasp and understand Vajrayana. But at least one should establish the following conviction. The views in some Sutrayana teachings are the same as those in Vajrayana teachings, but without question, Vajrayana contains many extraordinary pith instructions and superior means. Speaking of the superiority of Vajrayana, please do not consider it a unique viewpoint of Tibetan Buddhism. It is just as it is. Those who don't acknowledge this superiority don't acknowledge the truth, and those who don't acknowledge the truth are not worth arguing with. Vajrayana not only can be entered by numerous entry pathways, but also contains many methods for accumulating merit and wisdom. Take, for example, the 7-branch offering, which can be practiced in many ways according to the pith instructions in Vajrayana. Also, practices such as Guru Yoga, Generation Stage, and Completion Stage not only accord with Sutrayana teachings, but also align with the capacities of sentient beings of this degenerate age. Nowadays, many Han Chinese people are studying Vajrayana. When an eminent master of Tibetan Buddhism visits a Han area, many people will go to see the master. The explanation is twofold. First, these Han Chinese have a supreme affinity with Vajrayana. Second, Vajrayana has profound skillful means to make the primordial Buddha nature within us manifest without our having to undergo great hardships. The basis for these profound skillful methods lies in the way we direct our aspirations to see everyone and everything as primordially pure and perfect. A short while ago, several monastic members of Larungar went to my home monastery and visited Khenpo Legshed, who is in his 80s. They asked for teachings from Khenpo and videotaped the meeting. Later, I watched the video in which Khenpo Legshed's words can be summarized in 3 points. First, renounce the world. Nothing is worth clinging to, so we must generate renunciation. Second, living beings are suffering, so we must try our very best to arouse bodhicitta and help them. Third, the most fundamental and essential view is the perception that everything is primordially pure. However, this true reality of everything is veiled by beings' ignorance and afflictions, so we must cultivate pure perception. These 3 points, albeit very brief, are quintessential. I congratulated the monastic members, saying, "Indeed, you've got something very important from the visit." Senior practitioners like Khenpo Legshed may not be eloquent speakers, so some people don't appreciate their talks. But what's covered in the talk contains the quintessence of Theravada and Mahayana Buddhism, and what's particularly important is the pure perception in Vajrayana. Pure perception is not about imagining something impure as pure. As Mipham Rinpoche says in his Beacon of Certainty, it is truly laughable if we believe samsara to be impure but forcefully perceive it as pure. This is like regarding a vomit-filled vase as clean. It is stated clearly in the Tantras that everything is primordially pure. Even if someone doesn't accept Tantra, that person can always find the same view in the definitive teachings in sutras. For example, there is a story about Brahma Sikhin in the Vimalakirti Sutra, which is also mentioned in the Guhyagarbha Tantra. Once, the Buddha was giving teachings on the topic of when one's mind is pure, one's Buddha land will be pure. Sariputra didn't understand the teachings, thinking, if it's true the purity of the Buddha field arises from purity of mind, does it mean that the honored one's mind was impure during his causal stage? Otherwise, why is his Saha world so filthy? Knowing what Sariputra was thinking, the Buddha said, "The blind cannot see the sun and the moon in the sky. Is it the fault of the sun and the moon?" Sariputra replied, "No, it is the shortcoming of the blind, not the sun and the moon." The Buddha said, "Likewise, my Buddha field is pure, but living beings cannot see it. This is not the fault of the Buddha." Then Brahma Sikhin said to Sariputra, "Please do not think the Saha world is impure. In my eyes, the Buddha field of Buddha Shakyamuni is pure and taintless, as splendid as the heavenly palace of Ishvara, the abode of a highest deity." Sariputra was not convinced, saying that all he saw were thorns, precipices, abysses, and excrement. Plus, he said, roads were icy in winter, so it is hard to walk, and cities are crowded with cars. Okay, Sariputra didn't add the plus part. I'm going too far here. Then the Buddha touched the ground with his big toe, and the universe suddenly was transformed into a display of splendor and purity with boundless great qualities. Sariputra was in great awe. The Buddha said, "My Buddha field is always this pure. It is just that you failed to see its purity." Similarly, when different God beings eat the same food, they experience different tastes due to variations of their merits. Likewise, living beings have different karmas, so some cannot see the splendor of the Buddha field. Those who have a pure mind can see the purity of everything. The Flower Garland Sutra also says, just as the Mind King jewel appears in different colors to different minds, when beings' minds are pure, they can see pure lands. Thus, the views in the sutras, including the Flower Garland Sutra, the Vimalakirti Sutra, and the Lankavatara Sutra, are the same as the view of pure perception in Tantras. Therefore, please don't think that pure perception is only the Tantric view. In fact, if you delve into these classical sutras of Han Buddhism, you will find many related teachings on pure perception. If you have never studied Vajrayana and only know key instructions in Sutrayana, you may not be able to delve deep into the ultimate meanings taught in the Flower Garland Sutra and the Vimalakirti Sutra. Therefore, Buddhist schools of Sutrayana and those of Vajrayana should break through differences and achieve perfect integration so that we can get the ultimate meanings of Buddha Shakyamuni's teachings. Cultivating pure perception and honing our aspirations is very important throughout our practice. The Manjushri Mulakalpa, the root tantra of Manjushri, says everything is circumstantial, so it depends entirely on one's aspiration. Everything arises depending on circumstances, and circumstances depend completely on one's aspiration or mind. If the mind is pure, then everything is pure, whereas if the mind is impure, then everything is impure. The appearance of everything reflects the state of mind. As it is said in many tantras, if the mind is pure, even hell is the blissful pure land. If the mind is impure, even the pure land is a filthy place. For example, when a person with a pure mind visits Mount Wutai, he will feel it is no different from a paradise on earth. The monastics appear stately and elegant, and all the mountains and rivers are within the realm of Dharmakaya, the space of emptiness. In contrast, a person with a tainted mind will only see the mountains as ordinary and the people as those with heavy afflictions. So the person's trip to Mount Wutai will end up uninspiring. Thus, a pure mind and an impure mind differ immensely. With a pure mind, everything will become accordingly pure. The Sutra of Perfect Enlightenment says, "Sentient beings and the world they live in are of one dharma nature. Hells and heavens are all pure lands." Master Ji says in his Mohijiguan that the realm of Mara is the Buddha field. To those with strong conceptual minds, the realm of Mara is nowhere near as nice as the Buddha field. Yet the reality is that in ultimate truth, everything is beyond conception, and in relative truth, everything is pure and equal. The highest view within Sutrayana only refers to the great emptiness or shunyata, freedom from all elaborations and conceptuality. Although the teaching on pure perception is also brought up in sutras, including the Flower Garland Sutra and the Vimalakirti Sutra, it is introduced in a hidden manner without detailed elaboration. In Buddha's definitive view, everything is pure and afflictions are bodhi, or enlightenment. Thus, only through the doctrine of Vajrayana can the Platform Sutra be interpreted perfectly and thoroughly. Otherwise, upon hearing afflictions are bodhi, some may get confused, thinking afflictions such as desire, anger, and ignorance are supposed to be eliminated because no Buddhist wants to have them. How are they actually the wisdom of the Buddha? Or someone may think, if afflictions are bodhi, does this mean the Buddha and all beings are one? There are many such doubts arising in the mind. However, if you know the views of Vajrayana, you won't have such confusion. However, you should first switch your understanding. You should know that everything is entirely the manifestation or appearance of the pure Buddha field. It is due to our ignorance and afflictions that we cannot recognize anything's purity, just like an eye disease causes someone to perceive a white conch as yellow. If you follow the teachings of a qualified guru and cultivate pure perceptions of everything, conviction about Vajrayana view will naturally arise within you. The views in Vajrayana are not entirely independent of those in Sutrayana. Some people think Sutrayana requires the aspiration of bodhicitta, whereas Vajrayana requires pure perception. Such a clear distinction is wrong. Your aspirations depend on your level of faculties. If you can only arouse bodhicitta or loving kindness, then you may direct your aspirations to benefiting all sentient beings. Then if upon the basis of bodhicitta, you also recognize everything is primordially pure, you may further generate pure perception. The Vajrayana view of pure perception is not like forcing yourself to imagine a bad person as good, a deluded person as wise, or black charcoal as white. It is about recognizing reality as it is. Everything is primordially pure. We fail to recognize this because our minds are not pure. There was once a priest with an allergy to roses. One day while preaching in church, he noticed 2 pots of roses near him. Immediately he started to have allergy symptoms, eyes tearing, nose running, and non-stop sneezing, so the preaching didn't go well. Later, he scolded a staff member in the church, saying, "Why did you put roses close to me, knowing that I am allergic?" The staff member replied, "Those are actually plastic roses. Who knew you are also allergic to fake roses?" Therefore, there is nothing impure that inherently exists outside our minds. Everything is merely a reflection of the mind. The mind can mistake the real for the fake and vice versa. In fact, nothing is impure, including our desire and anger, and the essence of everything is entirely wisdom. Tantras including the Guhya Garbha Tantra, Secret Essence Tantra make many inferences about this view. Now that you understand that aspiration is very important, when listening to teachings, we should not perceive the place where the Dharma is taught, the teacher, the teachings, and so on, as ordinary and impure. Instead, we should keep the 5 perfections clearly in mind as we listen to the Dharma teaching. The 5 perfections are key elements including character, time, place, and so on, just like the elements of a narrative. According to some Dharma masters, we can visualize the 5 perfections in the following ways. The perfect place where we listen to teachings is the Deer Park in Sarnath, India. The perfect teacher is Buddha Shakyamuni. The perfect assembly consists of the Buddha's 5 initial disciples and 80,000 celestial gods. The perfect time is 49 days after the Buddha's awakening. The perfect teaching comprises the 4 noble truths of the first turning of the Dharma wheel. Or you can think the perfect place is Vulture Peak near Rajagriha, India. The perfect teacher is Buddha Shakyamuni. The perfect assembly consists of 5,000 bhikkhus, monks including Sariputra and Maudgalyana, 500 bhikkhunis, nuns including Mahapajapati Gautami, upasakas or male lay practitioners including Anathapindita, upasikas or female lay practitioners including Migaramata, and numerous other beings. The perfect time is within 12 years after the Buddha first taught. The perfect teaching comprises the doctrine of prajnaparamita, or the perfection of transcendent wisdom, of the second turning of the Dharma wheel. Or you can think the perfect place is the city of Vaisali or Rajagriha, or some other place in the human and God realms. The perfect teacher is Buddha Shakyamuni. The perfect assembly consists of numerous beings including bhikkhus, bhikkhunis, laywomen, laymen, devas, nagas, rakshasas, etc. The perfect time is within 32 years after the Buddha first taught. The perfect teaching comprises the doctrines of Buddha nature and Yogacara. Or according to Vajrayana teachings, the perfect place is the palace of the absolute expanse, Akanistha, which is beyond any conceptualization, defies any description, and is naturally pure. The perfect teacher is the Dharmakaya Buddha Samantabhadra, the embodiment of the primordial wisdom awakened since before the very beginning. The perfect assembly comprises male and female bodhisattvas and deities of the mind lineage of the conquerors, as well as those of the symbol lineage of the Vidyadharas. You shouldn't see the assembly members as ordinary beings, thinking, this person is a lay practitioner and that person is a monastic member, or this person's character is bad and that person's look is hideous. You should regard their nature as those of the noble beings of the mind lineage of the conquerors, such as Ratnasambhava, Jewelborn, Akshobhya, Immovable One, Pandaravasini, Wisdom Queen, and Datvishvari, Lady of Space, or of the noble beings of the symbol lineage of the Vidyadharas, including Garab Dorje, Manjushramitra, Janasutra, Vimalamitra, and Guru Rinpoche Padmasambhav, or of the deities. Or you can visualize the perfect place where you receive the Dharma teaching is the lotus light palace of the glorious copper-colored mountain. The teacher is Guru Rinpoche Padmasambhava, and the perfect assembly consists of the 8 Vidyadharas, Guru Rinpoche's 25 disciples, Dakas and Dakinis. Or you can think the perfect place where the Dharma is taught is the Eastern Buddha field. Manifest joy. The perfect teacher is the Sambhogakaya Buddha Vajrasattva. and the perfect assembly is the male and female bodhisattvas and deities of the Vajra family. Or you can perceive that the perfect place is the Western Buddha field, the blissful Pure Land. The perfect teacher is Buddha Amitabha, and the perfect assembly is the male and female bodhisattvas and deities of the Lotus family. Pure Land practitioners can visualize in this way. Therefore, one shouldn't think that the ultimate Buddha Amitabha resides somewhere else far away. In fact, what appears in front of us, such as people and places, is inseparable from Amitabha's Buddha field. Given your particular faith, you may choose to regard the perfect teacher as Buddha Amitabha, Buddha Shakyamuni, Padmasambhava, Bodhisattva Maitreya, or other deities. The Lankavatara Sutra says, "The mind of sentient beings is nirvana. Its nature is eternal purity." If you listen to the Dharma while keeping the 5 perfections clearly in mind, the perfect blessings will certainly infuse your mind stream. Whichever visualization of the 5 perfections you choose, the perfect teaching is that of Mahayana Buddhism, and the perfect time is the ever-revolving wheel of eternity. The ever-revolving wheel of eternity is an uncommon term in Tantras, which means that the passing of time never ceases. The Lotus Sutra has a verse that says, "For the purpose of saving living beings, as an expedient method, I appear to have entered nirvana. Yet in truth I have never entered parinirvana. I have always been here, preaching the Dharma." The Tibetan version of the Lotus Sutra also has a verse that says, "The Buddha never enters parinirvana. The Dharma never disappears." When the great Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche went on pilgrimage to Vulture Peak, he said at the foot of the mountain, when the 6th Dalai Lama visited here, he saw the mountain piled with volumes of scriptures. "What I presently see is luminosity, a state of the Buddha has never entered parinirvana, and the Dharma will never disappear," as is said in the sutras. According to Sutrayana teachings, Buddha Shakyamuni has already entered parinirvana, and the Dharma will disappear 5,000 years later after it was first taught. But according to the teachings of Vajrayana, the Buddha has never entered parinirvana, the Dharma will never disappear, and the primordial existence of everything is eternal. This is the meaning of the ever-revolving wheel of eternity. The explanation of such teachings can only be found in Vajrayana. I hope that when you listen to the Dharma, you will carefully contemplate and delve into the teachings. Listening to the teachings of the words of my perfect teacher offers you an opportunity to access tantric teachings without having to receive empowerment. You should feel very happy about this. Actually, today's teaching shouldn't have gone this far and deep. But as I've learned quite a lot before, I leaked the secret a little bit here and there. Therefore, in today's teaching, I have given you a pinch of tantric teaching, which, however, doesn't involve the advanced tantric practices. Nonetheless, you should recognize the superiority of Vajrayana. This is very important.